I didn't play a whole lot of new games in 2015, but I still played some absolute garbage. These are the top 5 worst games of 2015. The Wii U had a handful of games come out for it this year that ended up disappointing a lot of people. Mario Party 10, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, but the one that ended up disappointing me the most was Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. I have never seen such a bare-bones sequel to any well-established franchise before. It's still Mario Tennis, yeah, so it plays just fine, but you can seriously unlock everything in that game in just a few hours. And by everything, I mean there's not much. To give you an example, there's only one stadium in the entire game. Yup, only one location, background, something to look at in the entire game. You can change the surface that you're playing on, but the background never changes. What happened to the variety? You could have crapped out a water, desert, and ice stadium and then called it a day, but instead, nope. There's just one. And the online mode sucks too. There isn't even a way to directly play with your friends. I'd call it a lazy cash-in, but I don't even think that's the case. This game feels more like they had a hole in their release schedule and desperately needed something to fill it with. I saw it at PAX, I saw it at E3, it had numerous awards given to it at every trade show. Everything about Evolve was going to be awesome, like totally badass. But this is the perfect example of a really good idea absolutely destroyed by forced in DLC. If it had all of its planned DLC on disc ready to go right out the gate, man, it would have been an awesome game with tons of people playing it. But because they wanted that precious DLC to make money, they kept most of it out, releasing a game with not a whole lot to it, and a lot of people getting really bored really quickly. Its active player base dropped so fast. I love the concept of multiplayer games with asymmetrical gameplay, and even though it had its own balancing issues, it really is the lack of content that ended up killing what should have been an incredible day one game. I feel bad for the developers, because you know it wasn't their idea. I am the Knight. I'm also the worst PC port of all time. I didn't think Batman Arkham Knight was an incredible game, but it certainly wasn't bad either. But oh good lord was the PC port bad. In case you haven't heard about how bad the stuttering, the frame rate, and overall awful optimization of the PC port, well, let me tell you this. Shortly after release, they pulled it off of Steam. It was so bad, they were embarrassed to sell it anymore. So their plan was to take it down and patch it up and then re-release it good as new. And that is what they did. It did get re-released on Steam, months later. And wouldn't you know it, it was still a broken, buggy piece of crap. Nothing was fixed, and yet they still chose to sell it again. And at that point they said, screw it, I give up. And anyone who bought Batman Arkham Knight on PC last year could get a full refund from that game all the way through the end of December. 6 months worth of refunds. That's embarrassing. At the end of my worst games of 2014 list, I made a joke about a new Alone in the Dark game coming out and it being bad. I was right. Alone in the Dark Illumination was a bizarre attempt at a Left 4 Dead style co-op multiplayer game. The whole point of that game is to go through different areas and escape while bringing enemies into light sources so that you could shoot them in a multiplayer game. This means you are not alone, nor are you in the dark. This game further bastardizes the series' survival horror roots, all on the hopes that they could sell a broken, empty multiplayer shooter on name recognition alone. If you want an idea of how bad it is, I'll show you. I streamed myself playing that game for several hours and then put together a highlights reel over on the gameplay channel. If you really want to watch 10 minutes of an atrocity, feel free to go check that out. And the number 1 worst game of 2015 is Konami, as in the whole company. Now if this sounds familiar, it's because I said these exact same words 3 years ago when I was talking about the worst games of 2012, and they've only gotten worse. I can only summarize how Konami shot themselves in the foot, stabbed themselves in the heart, and pissed in their own eyeballs. But it really started with the cancellation of Silent Hills. PT showed tremendous promise and got everyone on board for a new Silent Hill game, especially one directed by Hideo Kojima. It was going to be incredible. The absolute stupidest thing they could have ever done was get rid of Hideo Kojima, the one thing keeping that company relevant. So they got rid of Hideo Kojima, no longer making that company relevant. I don't even want to mention all the pachinko machines with erotic violence and hit the lever, or the reports that came out and said working at Konami is basically like working in a prison. But there you go. I've never seen anybody, let alone a company, with such self-destructive tendencies, but wow, Konami, you've really taken the cake. Let me know what it's like hanging out with THQ and Majesco.